Here is the glorious Bear River. This couple of people kayaking this river. This is a wonderful river that floats off the north slope of the Uinta Mountains. As you can see, as we rise up, you can see we are looking at the Uinta Mountains off in the distance, this glorious chain of mountains. And we're on the north slope of the Uinta Mountains. And the Bear River is flowing off of that north slope on its way to Wyoming and Idaho, where it will cross those borders and the Utah borders over 20 times before it ends in the Great Salt Lake. The little-known Bear River is one of the most important rivers, not just in Utah and not even just in North America. The Bear River is one of the most important rivers in the Western Hemisphere because the Bear River feeds the Great Salt Lake. The Great Salt Lake is the largest wetland ecosystem that remains in the American West. It is a massive wetland ecosystem. And because it is such a big lake with so many wetlands on it, it attracts birds that travel from every country in the Americas, South, Central, and of course, North America. There are more than 250 species of migratory birds that stop over at the Great Salt Lake during their migrations across the globe. Some 8 million individual birds call the Great Salt Lake home for at least a portion of their lives. Imagine going on a road trip. Imagine getting in the car and going a really long way in your road trip. And by the time you finally get to your destination, you open the door and you stand up and your pants fall down. Your pants fall down because you've lost 40% of your body weight. That's what happens to some of these birds. They will fly for 55 hours straight before they will drop at the Great Salt Lake wetlands, exhausted, ready to rest and refuel themselves for the next leg of their journey. So the Great Salt Lake is critical to the future survival of these migratory birds. And in turn, the Bear River is critical to the existence of the Great Salt Lake. And that little known river that we saw is the heart of the Great Salt Lake because it provides 60 to 70% of the Great Salt Lake's water each and every year. So if we don't protect the Bear River for future generations of these birds will go extinct. And you can see this map of the United States that shows the Great Salt Lake. Virtually every map of the US shows this huge lake, the Great Salt Lake. But in reality, what's happening to the Great Salt Lake is that it goes up and down. It gets bigger and smaller each year, depending on how much water is coming into the lake. And this slide shows on the right the different elevations of the Great Salt Lake over time. These different blue colors show different eras in which the lake has gotten bigger or gotten smaller. And the reason that is a concern for us and for biologists and ecologists that are concerned about the existence of these migratory birds is that there is a new proposed water project at a cost of $3 billion to divert the Bear River upstream of the Great Salt Lake. It would cost $3 billion to build 3 dams and a 100-mile-long piping system to divert the river and prevent it from entering the Great Salt Lake. That would shrink the Great Salt Lake to probably its lowest level in recorded history, drying up wetland habitat for migratory birds coming from all over the Western Hemisphere. So what you can see here is this wonderful visual showing what the wetlands of the Great Salt Lake it's showing the existence of these wetlands at the Great Salt Lake. This slide shows the wetlands in and around the Great Salt Lake, and you can kind of see some individual birds resting and refueling and eating bugs, and occasionally there's pelicans that are looking for fish that are on the estuaries of the Great Salt Lake. But unfortunately, if you visit the Great Salt Lake in the last few years, what you see is this. You see dry lake bed with no water, or very little water. You can see off in the distances the Bear River, just this ribbon of water coming down. Because even though that map of North America shows this huge lake, in reality, much of it is dried up. And that's because of the existing water use without this new proposed Bear River development project. If this system of dams and pipelines is approved and constructed, the Great Salt Lake will be smaller and we will see these dry lake beds more frequently. In addition to that being an impact to the birds of the Western Hemisphere, it will be a big impact on human beings because of the air quality that dry lake bed creates. This is time-lapse shown from Owens Lake in California after Los Angeles dried up this lake. We used to be looking at a vast lake here called the Owens Lake before the 1920s when Los Angeles came in and diverted the Owens River upstream of the Owens Lake. After they diverted that water and sent it to Los Angeles, the lake disappeared and created this fine dust every time the wind blew. We are experiencing these kinds of dust storms already along the Wasatch Front. It's not uncommon to have dust events along the Wasatch Front that are 3 to 4 times as bad of air quality as our worst red air days. And so if we dry up the Great Salt Lake, we can expect a lot more air quality problems from these dry lake bed dusts coming into the air column. Now, I want to jump quickly into what we've also been experiencing in the last couple decades, which is climate change. You know, everybody knows that as we raise our air temperatures, it gets hotter, especially in the summer. What people don't realize is that what happens to our rivers and streams comes from our snowpacks in the winter. When we raise our air temperatures, we shrink our snowpacks, as you can see here. This was January, late January at Snowbird. And you can see very little snow in Little Cottonwood Canyon of Utah because this is what we are experiencing in our climate change world. We are experiencing warmer winter air temperatures and decreased snowpacks. For our rivers and streams, that means reduced flows in our rivers. And so here's the Colorado River near Moab, and we can see a big drop in the flows of the Colorado River over the last couple of decades as a function of our increased wintertime air temperatures and our decreased snowpacks. One of the biggest problems that we're facing in Utah on the Colorado River is another proposed water project called the Lake Powell Pipeline. The Lake Powell Pipeline is the largest new water diversion in the Colorado River Basin. That is a big statement because the Colorado River Basin is 7 states large. It's a huge watershed, a very vast area of lands that the Colorado River drains. And the Lake Powell Pipeline is the largest new water diversion out of that watershed. The Lake Powell Pipeline is a 140-mile long pipeline to take 28 billion gallons out of the Colorado River, pump it uphill 2,000 feet, and across that 140 miles of southern Utah desert. It would deliver that water to a community in southwest Utah known as St. George that already has one of the highest per person water use rates in the United States. Residents in that county, Washington County, use 300 gallons per person per day. And when it comes to climate change on the Colorado River, you can see quite clearly the impacts by visiting Lake Powell. So here is a historic photo of Lake Powell at Height, Utah, which was a marina where one could launch their boat into Lake Powell. And so this photo is probably about 20 years old, but that is not what it looks like today if you visit it. If you visit it today, This is what Lake Powell looks like at this location. You can see there's just this ribbon of the Colorado River, and the lake is gone. That lake is gone because our snowpacks are declining in the Colorado River Basin. If you zoom in a little bit, if you look at this red dot here, that is the boat ramp where one could previously launch their boats at Lake Powell. Let's just look at what that's like today. This is what that boat ramp looks like today. And that is a big problem for us that depend on the Colorado River for our drinking water, for our farms, for our ranches, and for all the residents downstream in large cities like Las Vegas and Phoenix and Tucson and San Diego and other communities that use Colorado River water to exist. And so this is what we can expect for the 21st century, is a drier century compared to what we observed in the 20th century.